Okay, hello everyone. Hi. I have never made a video like this before where I'm actually commentating face to face in front of a camera. This is very new to me. This is very nuanced. A very new setting. I don't think we have Jungkook here for emotional support. Basically, I started my first year of uni this year and I'm studying a Bachelor of Screen Production. And in so, I have been taking a lot of film studies classes and I've been watching a lot of films this year. So I had the phenomenal, groundbreaking idea to rank all of the movies that I've watched this year in a tier list. Basically, these are all of the movies I remember watching this year, and we are going to rank them. Okay, I've never done this before. Okay, what movie should we start with? Let's start with Avatar: The Way of Water. So, Avatar: The Way of Water, I forgot that I even watched it this year because it came out at the end of last year, at the end of 2022, and I thought that I watched it just before the new year, but apparently I didn't, because I looked back at my camera roll and found pictures of me and my ex-boyfriend on my, one of our first ever dates watching this movie. So that is a bit, it's something, and, but honestly, ex-boyfriends aside, the movie was good. I remember when I was on the date with him, I couldn't actually fathom what was going on at all throughout the movie because I was a bit too flustered by the fact that I was actually on a first date, like one of my first ever dates with a guy for the first time ever. So I was a bit more distracted sitting next to a guy that actually was showing me attention for the first time in my life. But anyway, I watched it a second time later on in this year with my best friend, and I was actually paying attention. Regardless, both times I was watching it, I loved the cinematography of it. Technically, it was just a really good movie. Like, clearly so much time and effort was put into making these movies and animating them. Like, they use actual people. It's a really cool process that I have been learning about in my own film classes and editing classes. I think this movie deserves... First of all, I need to go through the rankings, by the way. I forgot to go through the rankings. So basically, we have Snowlands on top, which is the top tier, and it's for the movies that were exceptionally great. They were technically phenomenal. They had great actors, great plot, but overall, just my favorite movies of the year, just hands down, that's it. They are my favorite movies of this year. So yeah, that's Snowlands on top, my favorite movies of this year. Then we have Objectively Great, which are the movies that were just good. They weren't my favorites, they weren't my absolute favorites that I rave about to my friends a lot, but they were there's something about them that was technically just great. Clearly they were made with a lot of attention to detail. There was a lot of effort put into these movies, and I can respect them for that, and I did enjoy them quite thoroughly, and I feel like a lot of other people would agree with me on that. So they are just objectively great. Then we have Interesting. Interesting is the interesting category. It's movies going into Interesting, the movies that I have mixed feelings about, movies that I could per se have liked, but they're not objectively that great. Technically, I don't know, they may have been directed quite poorly, or they may have not have been everyone's cup of tea, or I have my own little bits about it. I have my own personal things that I have against them, but I still liked them, or maybe I didn't. I have a lot to say about these movies, or they just kind of left a very interesting effect on me. So they go in here. So they're kind of this middle category that could be filled with movies I either liked or disliked, or just kind of in the middle. It's a bit weird. Bottom of that, we have Needs a Second Watch. So the movies in this category, I still need to form my own opinions on them. A lot of my opinions on these movies are not completely formulated yet, and it's because watching these movies I had a lot of mixed emotions, to the point where I just kind of was left feeling like, oh, I don't really know what to even think about this. I don't even know if I like this or not. Whereas the one in Interesting, I know my feelings on it, where it needs a second watch, I need to rewatch and reevaluate what I think about it. Then we have Were Professionals on Set? So this is just, like, bad. These are bad movies. They were, like, something about them were off. Like, clearly, something wasn't correctly synthesized throughout the production process. Like, I don't know, either someone was not acting properly, the script wasn't written well, the cinematography was off, or something like that. Like, just, was there an actual, like, body of professionals that this movie had to go through to get this, like, premiered? So these are the bad movies that I didn't like, and I have my own personal opinions on them about how they were bad. And then we have the very bottom tier, which is 2 hours wasted, and these are just completely bad. Like, at least with Professionals Were on Set, they have, like, the slightest bit of redeemable qualities to them. Like, at least I remember them. At least I remember them, I would say. But with 2 hours wasted, these movies, either I fell asleep during them, I don't remember them at all, had no emotional impact on me at all. Like, I did not need to watch it, completely wasted 2 hours trying to get through it. So yeah, with those tiers out of the way, and me already giving a TED talk about my experiences watching Avatar: The Way of Water, I think it deserves to be in objectively great. Yes, because it wasn't my favorite movie of this year by any means. It was very good. It's not like something I would watch over and over again when I need a feel-good movie, but it was great. I loved the romance aspects of them. Oh my god, I don't even remember. Jake's son, not the eldest son, the younger son, and that girl. The love, oh my god, I love the romance. The romance was so cute and heartwarming. I remember and like, it's so pretty. The world was so pretty. I loved the, like, lighter colors. There were a lot of purples and, like, blues, and just, like, yeah, the blossoming of the young love between, like, Jake's kids and, like, the other family's kids was really refreshing to see. I really did love the story. It just it doesn't reach that snow lands on top tier, but it was objectively great, and I feel like a lot of other people would agree with me on that. Like, it was just, like, a really great movie. So anyway, let's get into Do the Right Thing. Now, Do the Right Thing, I believe, was made in, like, the late 80s. I watched this. This was the first ever movie I watched for my first ever film class in my first ever year of uni. So this movie is very memorable. I remember it very much because it was great. This movie is about racism in 1980s America, New York. It's directed by Spike Lee. I remember really loving how this movie really relies on music a lot, and how music kind of goes hand in hand with cinema a lot, and I loved that aspect of it. Like, if you ever watch it, you'll hear a lot of, like, hip-hop and, like, Afro beats in it, and I think it was just directed and edited in a really great way that the music and cinema amplified each other, and they didn't feel dissonant. Like, it felt really, like, resonant. It felt really, like, put together in the musical aspect. That was, like, a main thing about it for me. But I also liked the colors. There was, like, a great use of, like, reds and blues in there to symbolize, you know, good and bad, or, like, the heat. I would recommend this movie to anyone that is really interested in American modern history. It depicts one whole day of being an African American, as well as being an Italian American. There's racism between an African American and an Italian American in there. And that was quite interesting to watch, because the movie doesn't really justify... I mean, it does. I mean, it sheds light on both perspectives and doesn't really... the movie doesn't try to steer you one way or the other. It's just, like, a movie that's depicting something. It's depicting a day in the life. And whatever your thoughts are on it. Like, that those are your thoughts. That the movie really wanted... You can tell that it was directed in a way that they wanted the viewers to really make up their own mind about it. And I feel like I'm going to have to put it in objectively great as well, just because I did really enjoy this movie. I feel like it was an objectively and technically just great and really well thought out movie. Musically, colorfully, editing-wise, the montages were great. The characters were so nuanced and so complex. Like, you really didn't know who to even like, because, like, they were real people. They weren't textbook superheroes. They weren't the typical black or white, good or bad. It's genuinely like a movie that really can make you think about things, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who is interested in those kind of things. So this is going in objectively great. And next, what should we do? What should we do for the third one? Let's do Vertigo. Now, Vertigo by Alfred Hitchcock. Yeah, I did not like this one. Which is gonna make people think a type of way about me, but I don't care. I had to watch this for one of my film classes as well. I remember just, like, the absolute sluggish trek trying to finish this movie. This movie was, like, I don't know, fucking 3 hours long or something. It felt like it. And, like, literally, the pace didn't fasten until the very last 20 minutes of the movie. For what? Like, I feel like, just me personally, I did not enjoy watching this movie because practically 80-90% of it was just, like, slow burn, a man stalking a woman and not understanding his emotions about her. There was nothing being progressed. Nothing really progressed until the very end. I can admittedly say that the ending was interesting, and we saw a lot of all of the greens that we started seeing when he started realizing that something was not right with this woman. It started technically really flourishing towards the end, and there was a plot twist at the end, though. Like, literally, this movie was so boring throughout. The ending was alright, and, like, no hate to Alfred Hitchcock. I'm sure he has greater movies. I just particularly didn't like this one. So where should I put this? Oh my god, that's the thing though, because I don't want to put it in We're Professionals on Set, because it's literally an Alfred Hitchcock movie. Like, that's such a hot take, I feel, to put that in there. I studied it because it's an objectively great movie, but the objectively great tier is for movies that I have to find interesting as well, and I just didn't find this movie very interesting. But I don't even want to give it a second watch. That's the thing, I hate this movie and I don't want to watch it again. I think I'll have to put it in interesting. No, I don't even like it though. I don't find it interesting. Okay, hot take, we're putting it in We're Professionals on Set. I obviously know there were, okay, before anyone starts twisting my words, I know this was made by Alfred Hitchcock, one of the greatest directors ever. But who allowed it to be that slow? Okay, next, what should we do? I'll just start flaming it. James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause. This movie, although I already said that this video was about movies that I remember, I remember forgetting that I even watched this movie throughout this year until I, like, looked back at all of the classes I took and all of the movies we had to watch and realized I actually did watch it. I just hated every moment of it. This movie, so boring. There was practically no plot. The thing is that it's very similar to Vertigo in the sense where nothing really happened until the last 20 minutes of the movie. But the thing is that the difference between Vertigo and Rebel Without a Cause is that even within the last 20 minutes of the movie, the interesting shit that happened wasn't even interesting. Like, I had no emotional connection to this movie. No impact was made. Like, this movie was just bad. And that's a hot take as well, because I also, like, this is also one of the greatest movies of all time. But really, like, no one of a modern, like, if I tried to show this to any of my modern friends, modern Gen Z friends, they would not like it because it's boring as fuck. And I'm sorry, this would have been great at its time. I'm not saying it's not great, but I don't know, just not for me. I did not remember it at all. I don't remember the story, really. I don't remember the plot. I don't remember anything about this movie except that I didn't like it. So yeah, it's going in 2 hours wasted. So then we have the Virgin Suicides. This one, I remember thinking that it's good, I guess. I wouldn't really say it's like a classic, because I had to watch it for my uni class. And we were watching like Vertigo, and we were watching Do the Right Thing, and, you know, other really renowned movies, but like, then we watched The Virgin Suicides. I don't know. To me personally, I didn't really like this movie just because it has this kind of clean girl aesthetic, but make it 2000s and make it suicidal. Make clean girl meets emo meets I want to kill myself, and it's not a good feeling movie. I felt so uncomfortable watching it, because there's this scene where she writes her crush's name on her underwear, and it's supposed to be this thing, but it's really just gross. Like, ew. That's not very clean girl of you, I don't think. The aesthetic, the way the characters were speaking to each other, the kind of how all of the girls were very dainty and soft, and how they were kind of, what's the word? They were like worshipped by these boys, but I get that that's the whole point of the movie, and that's why it's supposed to be an uncomfortable movie. I get that, but I don't know, I guess I just wasn't in the right headspace to really enjoy being disturbed. It didn't make you feel uncomfortable because it was just made poorly. Like, it was clearly directed in a way to make you feel uncomfortable. I feel like I'll put it in interesting, just because there were some aspects I liked about it. Again, there were a lot of aspects I didn't like about it. I think I'm gonna put it in interesting, because it was definitely an interesting movie. Just made me feel a really weird type of way. A very interesting type of way. Next, let's do something a bit more upbeat. Let us do Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Gentlemen Prefer Blondes is the first ever Marilyn Monroe movie I have watched ever. I really enjoyed this movie. This movie has the iconic Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend sequence in it, where she's dressed in pink and like she has all of these guys dancing around her. Marilyn Monroe, of course, but there's also another actress in it, Jane Russell, that I really loved in it as well. This movie, I did not expect this movie to be as empowering towards women as I thought it was going to be. I thought this movie was going to be just like a fun little kind of misogynistic movie about women and diamonds, but it's actually not. Like, it's actually, like, there are a lot of feminist undertones to this movie, because Marilyn Monroe has this like monologue at the end of it talking about how there's like a double standard between men and women in marriage and just in society in general.
Because I do love him.
Certainly. For his money.
No, honestly.
Have you got the nerve to stand there and expect me to believe that you don't want to marry my son for his money?
It's true.
Then what do you want to marry him for?
I want to marry him for your money.
There. Oh, Lorelei.
Don't you see? That's why we have to have his consent, silly.
Well, at least we're getting down to brass tacks. You admit that all you're after is money.
No, I don't. Aren't you funny? Don't you know that a man being rich is like a girl being pretty? You might not marry a girl just because she's pretty, but my goodness, doesn't it help? And if you had a daughter, wouldn't you rather she didn't marry a poor man?
But I was...
You'd want her to have the most wonderful things in the world and to be very happy. Oh, why is it wrong for me to want those things?
Well, I concede that... Say, they told me you were stupid. You don't sound stupid to me.
I can be smart when it's important, but most men don't like it.
There's just like a lot of discourse in this movie about men and women and their roles in society, and like it was just very refreshing to see it in a way that's still so very vibrant and colorful. It's a musical, so they were singing as well. There was dancing, and like it was so feminine. I really enjoyed watching it because it made me feel proud to be a girl. Seeing these other girls sing and dance about being girls and liking diamonds, but also liking men and having a power over them. Not in like a tyrannical way, but just kind of like in an independent way where they know what they want and they're gonna get what they want. It's very like I did not expect it to be that empowering. So I'm definitely going to put this movie in objectively great. Definitely would watch it again and would definitely recommend it to anyone who wants to watch a really fun 50s movie. Next. Do you want to talk about The Little Mermaid? Okay, so The Little Mermaid. What can I say? I think overall I was kind of disappointed. I think Hallie, I think her name's Hallie. Yeah, Hallie, the girl who plays Ariel, phenomenal voice. And, like, she plays Ariel so well. There was, like, this whole... Like, I'm not going to get into the discourse about Hallie playing Ariel. She was a phenomenal singer. I think her rendition of Part of This World outdid the original one. It was phenomenal, her singing in that. But besides Hallie's, like, incredible talent, that is her singing, I feel like the animation for it was pretty fucking bad, considering there was so much hype towards this movie, and it's a Disney Channel movie. Disney can make great animations. They have. It really did fall flat. I feel like they did not budget it correctly. Like, the animation of the hair, they didn't film anything underwater, so it's obviously going to look a bit weird when they try to animate it as if they're underwater. I think just, like, the visuals, the animations really dropped the ball for me. I didn't enjoy it visually. I think musically it was okay on the most part. Yeah, I liked Poor Unfortunate Souls. I love Melissa McCarthy. Loved to see her in it. Didn't know she could sing that like that. The music was good. Disney makes good musicals. In my fucking film class, my film peers were like going on rants about how Disney Channel can't make good musicals, and I like didn't say anything because I didn't want to get attacked. But like, what? What are you talking about? Disney Channel literally, like, paved the way. Like, has some of the greatest musicals ever. And you cannot tell me otherwise, okay? But anyway, where should I put The Little Mermaid? I think I'm gonna put it in interesting, just because I do feel like it could fit in We're Professionals on Set, just because I feel like the animation was not up to standard at all, but I did enjoy a lot of other parts of it. It's going in interesting because I have an interesting opinion on it. Anyway, next, what are we doing? Let's go into Battleship Potemkin. Okay, a lot of people probably don't know what this movie is. I had to do one of my first ever film assignments on this movie about the editing of this movie. This movie is a, like, 1940s, I think. I think it was made in the 1940s. It could have been made earlier than that. I don't remember. I did it in, like, the beginning of this year. But it's about war. The thing about this movie, it's a crazy movie. It's a great movie. It's a classic movie because of how interestingly it was edited. The editing of it is just fascinating. My assignment was on the editing style and just how intricate and how complex and how well thought out it was by... What was his name? Eisenstein? I think Eisenstein directed this movie. He edited this movie in a way that made it very dysfunctional and discontinuous. I personally enjoyed it from a film student perspective, that it was a very complex style of movie, and just a lot of people I know in my class didn't enjoy this movie because it's black and white. It's also silent. I mean, it's not silent. There is music in it, but there's no, like, actual audible dialogue. It's just, you have to read screen captions of what they're saying, and there's just, like, music playing in the background. It's quite an old-fashioned movie, but the selling point is really just how well it was edited. And in so, I feel like this movie deserves to be an interesting. By the way, trigger warning about the photo for it. I couldn't find a film poster for it, so I just got this classic screen grab from one of the sequences, the Odessa Step sequence, which is probably the most iconic sequence of this whole movie. I wouldn't recommend this movie to just anyone, just casually, because it's not something you would definitely, like, enjoy casually just on a Friday night, to sit back and relax, because there is a lot of explicit violence in it. I think I'm gonna put it in interesting just because I know a lot of people do not like this movie just because they did not enjoy it. Like, everyone in my class did not enjoy this movie. So I don't think I would put it in objectively great, because I feel like there has to be, like, a resounding, like, yes, a lot of people do like this movie, but I don't think a lot of people really like this movie, but it is a good one. So I'll put it in interesting. But shout out to Eisenstein. I enjoyed this movie. Let's talk about Hail Caesar. Hail Caesar is actually, it was made in like 2016, and it literally has the biggest A-list cast I've ever seen in a movie. Ever. There's Channing Tatum, There's Channing Tatum in it. There's George Clooney in it, who is so funny in it. I'll get to that. There's, like, Scarlett Johansson and Jonah Hill. Like, what the hell? They're, like, these crazy A-list celebrities. And I feel like no one even knows about this movie. I hadn't even have heard of this movie before I had to watch it for one of my film classes. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed this movie. This movie is, like, supposed to be, like, a commentary on classic Hollywood movies. It's supposed to kind of shine a light on how manipulative I think Hollywood can be at times, but in a very kind of, like, lighthearted and funny way. This movie was so fucking funny. I genuinely laughed. I remember watching this and just thinking, like, the comedy in this is so tailored to me. I feel like my sense of humor is really in alignment with the humor in this movie. I have to put it in objectively great in that regard. I really didn't have anything bad to say about this movie. It's objectively quite, I think it's critically acclaimed. I think it's been nominated for an Oscar or something. I think overall a lot of critics like it. I've never heard anyone else talk about this movie though, so I can't really say from, like, a colloquial point of view, like, if the general public really likes it, because I feel like no one really knows about this movie, but I really enjoyed it. And I think just seeing George Clooney play like a comedian role was quite refreshing to see, because he played it quite well. And he also looks like my dad in this movie. I, like, sent a photo of George Clooney to my dad and was like, you look like him in this movie. And he told me to shut up or something, but he does. Next, let us do The Gleaners and I. I doubt anyone I know has watched this movie before. This is a documentary movie that I had to watch on our week studying documentaries. I am right off the bat, oh my god, I don't even know. It's gonna be either objectively great or interesting, just because this documentary, I've never really watched a documentary as good as this one. It starts off as a documentary about potatoes and potato farming, and then it, like, circles into, like, a documentary about recycling, and then climate change, and then, like, people, and just, like, life in general. This documentary is kind of, it's filmed through the perspective of this woman, I think the director of this movie, yeah, and it's supposed to just, it's a documentary just about thoughts. Like, that's what I got from watching it, because it's very kind of nuanced. There's not a specific thing this movie really is about, because it's kind of, the trajectory of this movie is just kind of moving within a spark of thought. That's what I felt. I felt like this movie was directed in a way that was supposed to capture the director's thoughts and thought processes, and how being a potato farmer suddenly made her think about climate change and recycling, and then just the way people in general work together and how the world works. It, like, follows this really interesting, very, like, complex pipeline of ideas and thoughts, and there's like really cinematic moments of it in it, where she's, like, in front of the camera and she's, like, dressing up and she's putting on makeup or stuff, she's putting stuff on herself. It's really, it transforms the viewer and really puts the viewer in the state of mind that this director is in, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it in that sense. But again, I feel like if you're not really interested in movies that are supposed to be very technically advanced and you're supposed to really think about it, because I feel like a majority of people watch movies to kind of feel something and kind of watch a plot unfold and relate to characters. That's not what this movie is about. It's a documentary, and it's supposed to be a very thought-provoking one. So I don't know if I'd necessarily recommend it to anyone. I would probably recommend it to my best friend Alex, because I feel like she would maybe like it. I feel like I'd have to put it, just by the way I'm speaking about it, in objectively great. Like, for what it is of its genre as a documentary, a phenomenal one. I really enjoyed this documentary, and I feel like we really need more documentaries that are like this one. If I were ever to make a documentary, it would definitely be inspired by The Gleaners and I. So yeah, it's quite a good movie. I would recommend if you are interested in stuff like that. Okay, let's get into Scarface. So I didn't watch the Scarface from the 80s with Al Pacino, or whatever his name is. Sorry, Al Pacino. I watched the original Scarface from like the 1920s or something for my film class once again. And yeah, for what it was, I enjoyed it. I don't think it was a bad movie. I think Paul Mooney was quite attractive. Like, it was very weird coming across Paul Mooney and kind of having a crush on someone who's probably like dead by now, or is it at least like 90 years old by now. I don't know what the 1980s rendition of this movie is like. I've never watched it before. It's probably better than this one. I don't really know. I don't really have much to say about this movie, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. I didn't dislike watching it. My favorite part of it was probably the scene where, like, they're getting ambushed. Like, they're literally being shot at by ruffians and thugs, and Scarface's assistant is, like, trying to get a hold of someone on the phone, and is like, sorry, I like, can't hear you right now. Can you speak up? And there are people, like, actively trying to shoot him dead. Like, it was pretty... That scene was quite fucking funny. Like, I'm not gonna lie, because it was done well. Like... Anyway, I didn't like the really weird relationship Paul Mooney's character, Scarface, had with his sister. I thought it was kind of weird, not gonna lie. But I think for what it was, a 1920s black and white movie, I think it was okay. I think I'm going to put it in... I don't have much to say about it, but I do remember enjoying it. I think in that regard, considering I'm kind of like indifferent about it, I'm going to have to put in needs a second watch. Yeah, it just kind of didn't really emotionally move me in any way that's necessarily memorable in this sense, because I can't really remember any thoughts I have about it. I think I'd have to rewatch it to really form a strong opinion on it. Now, I want to get into, because we're getting into kind of like violent, classic Hollywood movies, I want to get into Taxi Driver. Taxi Driver is another movie that I had to do for one of my film assignments this year, and this movie is an absolute roller coaster. I willingly chose this movie because I thought, like, I'd heard such high praise of it. Like, a lot of people really think this movie is amazing, and I agree. But I wasn't expecting it to be as disturbing as it was. It is coined as a psychological thriller. Definitely is that, but I definitely wasn't expecting it to be as kind of, like, explicit and disturbing. I did not expect this movie to be about, eventually child prostitution. There were genuine moments when watching this movie that I felt very uncomfortable, because this movie is about child prostitution. The actress who plays the child prostitute is actually 13 years old, and there are scenes in it where she is actually being very touchy, with older men, like in their 20s, 30s, and it made me feel like not very great as a woman, you know, and I don't know how they even allowed their 13-year-old actress to even do that to her 20 to 30-year-old co-stars. That was quite weird. But besides that, because I feel like that's pretty much the only point of the movie that really made me quite disturbed, I did enjoy just kind of having this porthole into... What's his name? Robert De Niro's character... as like this Vietnam veteran, just came back from the war and is struggling with his mental health. The downward spiral of his mental health was very well paced. I very much enjoyed being kind of thrilled in that sense. The movie is supposed to be feel bad, and it's not supposed to be a movie that you like because it's supposed to be empowering or uplifting. It's supposed to be a movie that makes you upset and makes you think about things and makes you disturbed, and I think in that sense it did an amazing job. I think it's objectively a really great movie that really did Robert's character very well in just like depicting how he goes from trying to be a good person into eventually becoming a murderer. But like, you still kind of root for him because he's an anti-hero, because although he's a murderer, he murders the child prostitute's pimp. Spoiler alert. It's a very iconic movie. I did enjoy it overall, although I do have my nitpicks just with that 13-year-old actress being in there acting the way she was with her co-stars. I feel like there could have been better measures in place to make sure she doesn't do that. But overall, it was a very, very well-made movie, and I would suggest it to anyone who wants to watch a very good psychological thriller, but I would give them, like, trigger warnings. Definitely give them the trigger warning that there is, like, basically pedophilia in it. There's a lot of dark themes in it. So, yeah, I definitely recommend it with those trigger warnings in mind. But, yeah, very good movie. I did enjoy it. Anyway, so on that note of Taxi Driver, I feel like it would only make sense that I then talk about Joker. Because one thing, just as a viewer, watching Joker after watching Taxi Driver, is that they are so similar. I feel like the Joker definitely had a huge influence from Taxi Driver. It's basically the same premise. It's obviously like Joker's backstory, like his villain origin story, but again, it's like this psychological thriller where we're seeing this downward spiral into madness, which is something we saw in Taxi Driver, but it's not in a way where it's trying to really pitch you against the main villain, main character who is the villain, because he's not a villain, he's an anti-hero. And one thing that really connected those dots between Taxi Driver and Joker with me was the fact that Robert De Niro was in it as well. But instead, Robert De Niro is not the anti-hero, the main character. He shows up at the end and is basically this outward voice to the Joker, being like, you are what's wrong with society, like he's degrading him, and like, I feel like that's not coincidental. I feel Robert De Niro really knew what he was doing when he decided to do this movie. It was just very interesting to see Robert De Niro play a character like that after he had played essentially the role of the Joker in Taxi Driver. I think that was very cool of Robert De Niro. I think this movie was very well done, but I wouldn't watch it again. The violence, just because the Joker was made so recently, we've had more updates in technology that can make movies look way more realistic. There's this scene in the Joker where you see someone get shot in the head. Actually, multiple times you see people like explicitly get shot in the head. There's no cuts, you see it just like that. And I think you see it in Taxi Driver too. They're just like so similar, these movies. That's what I mean. Like, there are so many scenes where you get people shot in the head and just kind of like inner monologues and these montages of internal thoughts of these main characters. They're so similar, and having Robert De Niro in the ending of Joker, I felt was like the cherry on top. I feel like that was the perfect decision anyone could have made on this movie. And the acting of, I don't even know his name. It's like, Joaquin Phoenix? I don't know if I said his name. I'll just call him Phoenix. His acting is superb. Hands down, amazing acting. Yeah, he really brought it to life. Watching this movie, it really didn't feel like he was acting. Like, he was so well tuned with his character, his monologues, his dialogue, his emotion. It was so raw. There were times where I felt really bad for him. I feel like it only makes sense that it's an objectively great. It's so many people's favorite movie. Although I am kind of wary of men who say it's like their favorite movie of all time, because that's a bit... Really? I mean, like, yeah, it's a really great movie, but like, favorite movie of all time, Mr. Sir. What? That's a bit... Objectively great movie. Let's now do... I want to get the conversation out of the way. The conversation was a movie that I also watched for my film class. I enjoyed it. I really want to put everything in objectively great. Like, everything is objectively great at this point. I feel like not a lot of people would agree with me, but I really enjoyed this movie. It's quite slow burn, I would say, as well, because again, it's just kind of this... It's also a psychological thriller, but there's less violence in it, of course. It's more just kind of the downward spiral of insanity for this guy who is trying to save these people that he thinks are gonna die. He's like overwhelmed with guilt. It's just about how guilt and paranoia can really consume someone. I remember there's a lot of use of sound in this movie, and it was just very technically well done. The sound in this movie is great. It's all about this guy being like a sound operator or something, so it just, like, it made perfect sense that there was so much emphasis on sound in this movie, which is, again, something, like, it's something I really love. It really makes a movie when something is really thought out like that. You can have, like, a very simple premise, but really delve deep into it and pick out all of these little details that you can emphasize and make it really great. Like, it was so well done. I have to put it objectively great, because just of the way they really messed around with sound technicalities and how that plays such a vital role in this main character's spiral into insanity, because his whole life is sound and recording, taping voices and conversations. That's why it's called The Conversation. And at the end, I really love the fucking ending, because, like, he goes crazy and he takes apart his whole house and he just sits there in the madness playing his, like, saxophone, and it's the tune of the motif sound that had been playing throughout the entire movie, and that just, like, wrapped it all together. Like, it's just, like, a very technically well-made movie. Yeah. I think we're gonna get into the first movie that is going to land in the Snowlands on top tier, and that's gonna have to be Mildred Pierce. Hands down, one of my favourite movies that I watched this year. Did not expect to enjoy it as much as I did at all. I watched it for, again, one of my uni classes, and I wasn't expecting to enjoy it because it was a noir. It's a black and white noir film, and I've never actually properly watched a noir film before. Never really was very attracted to black and whites with very heavy dialogue, which is what I always kind of thought was tokens of noir genre of film. But I really enjoyed this film just because of how, again, surprisingly empowering this movie was for women. Our main character, Mildred Pierce, it's all about motherhood and the relationship between the mother and daughter. But as well as that, like, this movie is also just, like, her success story, like Mildred Pierce's success story from having to divorce her husband and having no job to creating this empire for herself. Like, she makes this restaurant chain around America, and she's, like, rich and she's successful and self-made. And mind you, this movie was made in the 1940s. It was just very refreshing to watch something so old in an era where you would think just naturally that that's not really what the status quo really is. Like, back then I would only think that women would only ever think about staying in the home and just kind of being in the kitchen and just kind of being a decorative ornament to a man who does all the work for them. But this movie is the opposite, and it's just kind of all about how a woman can do as much as a man can. On top of just all of those feminist themes and the complex relationship that is between the mother and daughter, the story was great. It was well thought out. Like, I loved how the story was told in an interrogation room where she's basically just telling the story of how she murdered her husband, whereas, you know, big spoiler alert, she actually didn't murder her husband, but turns out that her daughter killed her husband, and she was going to go to jail for her daughter, which again is, like, so complex. It's like the complex bond of the mother and daughter. The twist at the end was so well done. Like, it was, like, I did not expect it. I did not expect it. I didn't know what the fuck was going to happen at the end of the movie. Like, I really didn't. Like, it was so interesting and so well paced. The themes were great. The characters were great. I loved her best friend. I think her name was Iris. She was great. Again, another independent woman. I loved her monologues. Can I, like, insert one of the monologues that Iris had that I just loved? Insert it if you can fucking find it, babe.
You never used to drink during the day.
Never used to drink at all. It's just a little habit I picked up from men.
Oh, men. I never yet met one of them who didn't have the instincts of a heel. Sometimes I wish I could get along without them.
You've never been married, have you, Ida?
Now, when men get around me, they get allergic to wedding rings. You know, big sister type. Good old Ida. You can talk it over with her man to man. Getting awfully tired of men talking to me man to man. I think I'll have a drink myself.
I would highly recommend this film to any one of my friends, just because of everything I just said. Great movie. Snowlands on top. Snowlands on top. Let's get into Barbie. Let's get into Barbie, guys. I just want to get it, like, straight. I am a feminist, and I have literally just, like, gone on tangents about how I've loved some of these films for how empowering they are for women. But, and there's a huge but, I did not enjoy the Barbie movie as much as I would have liked to. I think and it's purely because of just how I enjoy movies. As a film student, I felt like there was just way too much happening in this movie for it to make linear sense. I feel like the trajectory of this movie was just kind of like everywhere. There were so many different branches, so many different things that were being sprinkled on each other at once that made this movie, like, I know it was supposed to be this kind of like jam-packed feminist film, and it is, but to me, I feel like it's just very disorderly and not very thought out, in the sense where all of these little things that are sprinkled into it make perfect sense together and are cohesive together as one whole movie. Like, there was this one scene. There were, like, multiple scenes, but there's this one particular scene I remember coming out of this movie and thinking, what the fuck was it? Like, there was this scene where they just came into the real world, and then all of a sudden Barbie, like, sits down at a bus stop and just, like, randomly just tells an old woman that she's beautiful, and I get why they did it. Don't get me wrong, I'm not stupid. I'm not trying to say that I don't understand why they did that. I understand what they were trying to do with it, and they were trying to say, like, beauty has no age, all women are beautiful. I know. I did like that they thought to do that. I did like the idea of that, but I thought just, like, in the middle of that sequence, it made no cohesive sense. I thought it was just really random, and there was another point where they're running around the office, like Barbie meets the CEO of Mattel or something, and they're like running around the office, and then all of a sudden she walks into a room, and it's like just very starkly dramatic and just contrastingly different to what we had just seen. And I can understand that may have been directed to be like that, like it was supposed to be very kind of like, whoa, what's going on now, like what the hell. But I just don't feel like for a movie of its genre that it made a lot of sense as a whole. Like, I feel like this movie didn't really understand what its genre was itself. I feel like you can't box this movie into a genre, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I feel like a lot of movies kind of go beyond genre and break a lot of boundaries. But just with this movie, like, I'm sorry, but I feel like this was more in, like, you can't box it into a genre because it wasn't thought out well enough to really put it into one, because there's a difference between kind of breaking boundaries because you're thinking about different things at once, but I feel like Barbie just put way too much in it for it to make a lot of cohesive sense. Because there were funny parts, there were parts that made you want to cry, there were parts that made you fucking angry. Don't get me wrong, there were so many parts of this movie that I loved. I absolutely loved the whole plot that was like the patriarchy and how the Kens took over. It made me infuriated watching it. Just the way Ken started talking to Barbie, and just like the takeover of the dream houses. Absolutely hated it, but like that was so good. Like, it made me feel something. But there were just other plot points that made no sense to me. Like, what was the point of having that CEO of Mattel in the movie? Like, what? Like, you could erase any part of the movie that had, like, Will Ferrell in it and his character, because he didn't have any part in the movie. Like, he could have been erased from the movie and the movie wouldn't have changed. He was just there for fluff. I felt so disappointed because I really wanted to enjoy and love this movie as much as I hyped it up to myself to be. But I remember coming out of it feeling disappointed, but definitely thinking to myself that I needed to give it a second watch. So I'm going to put it in a second watch. There were definitely professionals on set. I definitely did not like it as much as I did, so it's not going to get interesting and it's not going to get where professionals put on set. I think I really need to give it a second watch because I haven't. I've only ever watched this movie once. To look back at everything that I found very dissonant and very obtuse about the movie and kind of try to maybe piece it together because I just wasn't ready. Maybe I just wasn't ready for everything that was about to get thrown at me. So yeah, I'll put it at needs a second watch. My thoughts could change on this movie. It's going and needs a second watch, okay? Don't kill me. I still love Barbie. I'm still a fucking feminist, okay? That's just my 2 cents. I want to get into Whiplash now. Whiplash was one of my favorite movies that I watched this year. Miles Teller. I love Miles Teller. He is so hot, and he is one of the main reasons why I watched this movie. Miles Teller being hot aside, this movie was really well made. Because again, I personally really love when sound and music has a really important role in the film and how it's made. Whiplash is a story about a drummer and music in general, and this drummer's relationship with his maestro, I don't know, the conductor, the guy who fucking conducts the whole band, his very abusive, toxic relationship between the two. His conductor is a psychopath, but it's so good. It's so good. It's thrilling. It's really thrilling, and the montages, the way it's edited with the music, there's this one montage, insert it now. So good. It's just I love it, because there was you can tell there was so much effort put into it, making the editing work so well together with the music. I loved the score. Nothing better than a movie that has a good score, good soundtrack, whatever. 100% better for me. But that's just me. I love musicals, just movies that have a lot of musical influence in them. I think the acting was great, and I think the relationship between the two main characters was very good. It was very well done, very well executed, just in a way to showcase how abusive relationships can be. Abusive and manipulative. I don't know. I have so much praise for this movie. There was nothing I found wrong with this movie, really. I loved it. I did hate how he cheated on his... Oh, he didn't cheat on his girlfriend. He just he was a bit of a red flag to his girlfriend in the movie, I must admit. But that didn't take away anything for me. I would 100% watch this again. 100% one of my favorite films this year, and would 100% recommend it to my friends who want to watch a very good movie. Oh my gosh, it's just so technically amazing. Just the way it was directed. Yeah. There's nothing really else I can say. I just loved it so much. Love you, Miles Teller. Love you. Okay, let's get into... Okay, now I'm gonna get a bit mad. We're going to get into Night of the Living Dead. I hated this movie. This was probably the least favorite movie I had watched the entire year. Number 1, 0. Literally worst movie I watched this entire year. Going straight, it's going number 1, it's passing Rebel Without a Cause. It's number 1 on the 2 hours wasted list. I remember I had to watch this for film class because it's one of the world's greatest horror movies. I beg to differ. I fell asleep. I swear to God, I fell asleep during it. I just did not enjoy it. For what it is, it's supposed to be a horror movie. It's supposed to be thrilling. I was not scared at all. I was not thrilled at all. I was completely and utterly bored throughout the whole movie, and that is one thing a horror movie should never be. It should never be boring. No matter how bad a horror movie can be, it will still try to make you scared. It will still make you feel emotions, whether it be you laughing at how bad it is or angry at how bad it is. This was just boring. Because, like, the whole premise was that we were supposed to be waiting for the zombies to kill everyone. Why were we waiting the whole movie for the zombies to come and get everyone? The whole, it made no sense to me how the whole movie was just a waiting game with a bunch of dialogue and a bunch of fucking boring-ass characters. First of all, from a film student perspective, I just want to let it be known that I do understand that the ending was good. I mean, like, I think what they did with the male character being a black man and his death at the end, that was well directed, and I want to admit that right now, that I'm not trying to kind of ignore the slight social commentary. I feel like that was definitely some social commentary there about being a black person in America, victimized constantly by the white people in the film. Like, I definitely do see how well thought out that was, but that was at the very end of the movie. That was literally how the movie ended. He died and then it ended. So, like, yeah, that ending was good. The very ending, the last 20 seconds of that film was good. But the whole, like, fucking hour or so, like 2 hours, would never watch it again. I'm so sorry. I did not enjoy this movie. And also, I do not like how they depicted the women in this movie. One woman, oh my god, the main woman was, like, useless. Why did they make her useless? Like, they made her the ultimate damsel in distress, did not contribute to anything, did not help in any way, was there for absolutely no reason. You could have taken her out of the movie would have progressed the exact same way. Why was she the main character if she had no fucking presence in the movie at all? And, like, the only presence she had was her crying about the man that she loved. Oh, was it her brother or the man she loved? I don't know, but the whole movie, she was just crying over a man, and I did not appreciate that at all. So yeah, going in 2 hours wasted. I just did not like this movie at all. Worst movie of the year. Let us get into Black Swan. I watched Black Swan just because I really wanted to watch it. I have heard amazing things. It won an Oscar. I think Natalie Portman won Best Actress for it, I think. Or maybe it was like Best Movie of the Year. I don't even remember. But it did definitely win an Oscar. I really wanted to watch critically acclaimed, very just objectively great movies this year, and that's exactly where it's going to have to go. I think it was an objectively great movie. I don't recall there being much sound emphasis in it, but the cinematography was insane, especially in this one sequence. There was this one scene where she's pirouetting, she's like going in circles and circles, and the camera is like following her, and I just remember watching it for the first time thinking, oh my gosh, like, that's perfect. I just thought, like you don't have to do that as a director, as a cinematographer. You don't have to go out of your way to do risky, well thought out scenes like that and like just movements like that with your camera, but you can, and taking that risk just makes it, like, amplifies the movie. It makes it so much better than what it could be if it was just half-assed and just filming her just like straight, like steady, just pirouetting. Like, the fact that they did that, just that little moment within the film, because there's no other moments in that film like that. I just remember watching that and thinking, oh my gosh, that was so well done. This movie is very similar to Whiplash, where it's depicting an obsessed artist, which is why I love these movies so much, because, like, I love that kind of story. I love that trope, seeing how obsessed an artist or an academic can go, like can be, and how far deep into their craft they can go before they, like, brink insanity, and they're doing it to themselves, and it's just such an interesting trope. It's just such an interesting thing to watch. This movie wasn't my favorite movie ever, not as much as Whiplash, but that's not to say that Whiplash was better objectively than Black Swan, because obviously not. But yeah, I think, like, it just personally wasn't, like, my favorite movie ever, but it definitely was good, and I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. It was well paced, and it was so, oh my gosh, like, there were times where I genuinely was like, what is happening? Like, is she dead? Is she not dead? Because they're, like, if you've watched the movie, you know, eventually the line between her mental state and the viewer, it becomes detached and blurred. They blur it together, and you can't tell what's real and what's not, because you've eventually just situated yourself in her head that you're seeing what she's seeing, and that's subjective, and you know, you don't actually know what's real or not. It's so well done. I loved that movie. Okay, anyway, okay, so we've got the last 7 movies. Let's try and bunk them out. Let's go for Terminator 2. Why not? Now, I had to watch Terminator 2 for one of my university classes, believe it or not. I had to watch it for classic Hollywood, some of the greatest films of all time. And that's just like kind of something I was not expecting Terminator 2 to be on the list. And I like went into it thinking like, yeah, I am not going to enjoy this. But I was pleasantly surprised. I actually enjoyed this movie. Like, Arnold is actually quite hot in this movie. I don't know. Like, I had never felt a sexual attraction towards Arnold until I watched this movie, and he's like so protective over this little boy, and he's like in a fatherly way, and he's like buff, and his sole purpose is just to protect this boy, and he's like shooting guns, and he's just like, oh my god, he's so daddy. But like I that was like a huge part of that movie for me. But it was genuinely like a very interesting plot. I didn't expect myself to like it because it did seem very like hyper masculine, very, very targeted towards masculine audiences. So I wasn't expecting myself to like it, but I did. I found it interesting. The plot was easy to follow, and it was fun. It wasn't boring. I don't know what about it. I liked it, and I genuinely went in thinking I was gonna hate it. So like, objectively great. I don't know. I don't know if you'd classify Terminator 2 to be objectively great. I think I'm going to put it in interesting, because I personally wouldn't say it's the greatest movie I've ever seen, but I enjoyed it for what it was. I genuinely didn't dislike it. So it's going in there. It surprised me. It was definitely one of the most surprising movies I watched this year, just because of how much I liked it. But okay, let's go into Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. This, you already know, guys. You already know it's going into Snowlands on top. I would go on a whim and just say I prefer this movie to the first one. I watched this movie. I think it really comes down to your mindset and just where you are throughout your life that really affects the way a movie affects you. I watched this at a very good time for me to be watching it, I guess you would say. I don't know. I watched it at a point where I was very sad. I was like going through something at this point, and I went out randomly with a friend from work, and we watched this movie because I did really want to watch it, and I loved it. One thing about this Across the Spider-Verse, like the Miles Morales Spider-Man movies, is that I fucking love the aesthetics and the cinematography of it. The animation is insane. I love the way these movies are animated. I love the colors. I love the design of the characters, how they are drawn, the style of it. Like, it's very comical. I thought this movie's villain was so good. Such a complex... Take a shot every time I've said complex and nuanced this whole video. But I really loved his villain. I thought it was such an interesting character design. I loved the way he was actually, physically designed. I thought the thought of him being anything and nothing all at once, so cool. He was genuinely scary. There's this one sequence, hopefully I can find it, put it in if you can find it, of he's transforming, and he's overcome by anger, and it genuinely scared me.
Our future. I'm gonna take everything from you, like you took everything from me. What? See you back home, Spider-Man.
It genuinely made me feel scared and emotion. It moved me, this movie. The emotions I was put on it. I think the story was so good, and just I loved the diversity in the characters as well. We got the Spider-Man from India. We got so many different Spider-Mans. We got every Spider-Man imaginable in this movie. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was long, but I remember thinking when watching it, I do not want this film to end. And that's the best feeling ever. I did not want this film to end. I was so invested in the story. The story was insane. The plot was insane. And the plot twist, I actually gasped. I gasped at the plot twist. Didn't even see it coming till right as it happened. I was like, shit. I actually said, oh shit, I think. I don't even remember, but I remember like genuinely being shocked enough to actually audibly say something in the cinemas. Amazing movie, really moved me. Hands down one of the best movies I've watched this year, and like it's probably up there as one of my new favorite Spider-Man movies, topping the original Into the Spider-Verse one. So yeah, really thoroughly enjoyed this movie and can't wait for the next one. Oh my goodness me. Ugh, when is it coming out? My gosh, I'm so excited for it. Okay, now let's get into another Marvel movie then. I did also watch The Marvels. Now, this was not a movie that I intended to watch. This was a movie that I went to the cinemas with my friends one day, like there was nothing else to watch, so we just watched it. The thing is that I don't particularly like the new Marvel movies that are coming out of Marvel recently. Like, sue me, don't really enjoy them that much as I used to. I really loved like first generation Marvel movies. Back when they used to have a lot of angst, they used to be a lot darker. Now they're very comical and they're trying to be really upbeat and funny. I don't know, I don't even know what I'm saying. It's quite late and I've been filming for like almost 2 hours now. I enjoyed this movie for what it was as a Marvel movie made, like released in 2023. It is exactly what it is. It doesn't, to be honest, it's no different to any other Marvel movie that's probably being released right now or has been released in the past few years. I did enjoy seeing Park Seo-joon in it. I didn't even know he was in it until I saw him on screen and I was like, Park Seo-joon? What the fuck? What are you doing here? I enjoyed the girlhood aspect of it. It wasn't a necessarily bad movie, because it's not like I came out of it mad that I watched it, because like it was okay. I was very indifferent about it. I think I'll put it in We're Professionals on Set, actually. Just because, not just for this movie, in general, I feel like Marvel, they really need to start getting their shit together, because I used to really love Marvel. I had my Marvel phase a while ago, really loved Marvel at one point, but I can't watch them anymore because all of the movies, all of the shows, everything they're fucking producing is the same. Like, I feel like I'm watching the same movie over and over and over again. Same aesthetic, same humor, same characters. Jeez Louise, all of these characters are in the same movies. Seriously, like, Haley Steinfeld is in every single Marvel movie to exist. I swear to God. There's nothing different between any of these movies now. They're all the same, and I'm not enjoying them. So I'm gonna put it on We're Professionals on Set, just as a PSA to all of the Marvel movies coming out in general, that they really need to start changing up the formula of the way they're making their movies, because it's really disinteresting. Like, I really can't find a single person that's a fan of Marvel anymore that's enjoying the newer movies more than they did the older movies, because the older movies were great. That's my 2 cents on that. Final 4, guys. Okay, we've got the final 4. Can't believe we've almost made it to the end of this freaking video. Been filming for almost 2 hours. I think we'll go into Chinatown first. So Chinatown is another noir I watched, but it's a neo-noir. It's not in black and white, but it's still kind of the noir style, per se. I did enjoy this movie. I watched it for one of my assignments in my film classes as well, and I was supposed to intertextually compare Chinatown with Mildred Pierce, and I just, came up with the conclusion that, again, I adored Mildred Pierce, and this one was okay. Let me try and collect my thoughts about this movie real quick. I really liked the coloring. I'm pretty sure it was in Technicolor. Loved the coloring of it. I thought it was a very visually appealing movie. I think the way gender roles were portrayed in it was quite disappointing. I think the female characters were very much led down by their male characters. At the end of the movie, the main female character dies, and her death is swept under the rug. All of the male characters go back to what they're doing, and, obviously I feel like that must have been done purposefully. I didn't really enjoy that though, because I feel like even before her death, the female character, our main female character played, she wasn't very independent of herself either. I feel like she was constantly just kind of accessorizing the man. 95% of all of the characters in this film was male, and that's just something that doesn't really relate to me as a female viewer. This may target a better male audience, but it really didn't target me. I think, oh gosh, because it's objectively great, but I really didn't like how the females were portrayed in this movie, because there weren't many of them. I think there were only 2, and one didn't show up till the very end. I think I'm gonna have to put it in interesting. Because although, like, I will admit it's a great movie, I think I did get bored at times, and again, everything I said about the male-female dynamics there, just a bit kind of like, that could have been better. So yeah, that's going in my interesting thoughts. Let's do FNAF then. This year was definitely the renaissance of everything Josh Hutcherson and just the appreciation of that man. I love Josh Hutcherson, and watching him in this film really, like, it relit something in me. I forgot how much I love Joshy. For what this movie is worth, it was good. I watched this with my mum, and my mum agreed, like, it was, like, she really liked this movie. I don't think this movie was technically or groundbreakingly great. I don't think it deserves to necessarily be an objectively great, but I loved it. You know what I mean? Like, I just loved it. Like, there really isn't anything negative I have to say about this movie. Like, it was good. The thrilling aspect of it, just like the way the plot unfolded, I thought it was good. I don't think there were any plot holes. Obviously the acting and the humor, bit childish at times, but again, it's PG, it's targeted towards a younger audience. The only thing I would have to say about it was that I do think that the middle of it was a bit slow, but overall, I did enjoy this movie. I don't know where to put it. I kind of want to put it in objectively great. Like, I think I have to put it in interesting. I need it to be known I loved this movie. It's just that it was a silly, goofy, fun, like, kids horror movie about FNAF. I used to be a FNAF kid, used to play the games, used to know everything about the lore. So having this movie, it healed something in me. Like, it really brought something back into light with me. So I really did appreciate this movie. It's just, like, obviously not the best movie of all time, so it's going there. Last two. Let's go with Nomadland first, just because I want to leave the best for last. Nomadland was the last movie I watched for my film classes of this year, actually. So Nomadland, I don't know where I'd put this. I think I'm going to put this in either interesting or needs a second watch. Just because I can understand why it got an Oscar. There were aspects of this movie that I really liked. Number one would be the fact that all of the characters that we meet in this movie, besides the main woman and that one guy that she had a relationship with, everyone else in this movie are real people, and the people that they are playing in this film, they're not playing anyone. They are telling their own stories. I didn't even know that until we had to discuss this movie in class, and the people that did an assignment on this movie told me that no, all of the people that she met on the road, because this movie is about nomadic people living in cars and just kind of driving around, meeting new people, living nomadically, that all of the people that she met nomadically are actual real-life nomads, and they're all telling their real-life stories in the film. That was so heartbreaking to realize, because there was this one guy at the very end of the movie who's talking about his life story that made me cry, and I had no idea that that's his actual life story. It's this guy who's talking about the loss of his son and just like how that led to his nomadic lifestyle, I think. I don't know, like, insert the clip.
I can relate. I rarely ever talk about my son, but today would be his 33rd birthday, and 5 years ago we took his life. And I can still barely say that in a sentence. And for a long time, every day was, the question was, how can I be alive on this earth when he's not? And I didn't have an answer. And those were some hard days. But I realized that I could honor him by helping people and serving people. It gives me a reason to go through the day. Some days that's all I've got.
That was such, like, a beautiful moment, and hearing that was real, like, after watching it, completely made it 100% better. And also this other scene where this other woman is talking about just like her view on life and how life is supposed to be lived to the fullest after losing her daughter, or like, I don't know, she lost her mum. She like all of these, it's about loss and life, and like this movie was very thought-provoking, but it was very sad and quite slow. A lot of people had mixed reviews of this movie in my film class, rightfully so. I don't even know what I'd necessarily say. I feel like I'm going to have to put Nomadland in interesting, because I definitely don't need a second watch for it. I can admit it was good, it really made me feel something. It was just like at other points, besides the fact that it was very touching, it was also very slow. It's just not necessarily my cup of tea. So yeah, it's going in interesting. Which leads to my final movie of the year, The Hunger Games, A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. We already know where this is going. Let's just like boost it all the way up, y'all. Let's just go to the top. Oh my gosh, why is this not going up? Well, that was underwhelming. Let's just move it to the very front. This, I think, would be number one, my favorite movie out of all of the movies I watched this year. Complete cultural reset for me. Bit of context, I have been a Hunger Games girly since the original movie came out. I was 8 years old when the movie came out, had no idea about the books existing before then because I was 8 years old in 2012 and the books came out when I was like maybe 6 or 5 years old. I genuinely grew up wanting to be like Katniss. Katniss was my role model, and I mean that genuinely. I'm not saying that as like a fangirl. I'm saying that as like when I was 8 years old, I genuinely wanted to be Katniss. I wanted to be like her. I tried my best to always kind of channel Katniss in me, and I still have such a close emotional connection with Katniss and her character, and in so just the movie series in general. Hands down, The Hunger Games is my favorite movie series of all time, and so having a new movie come out this year when I'm now 19 years old and have lived my life, and just like it was amazing. Like there was no faults. I watched this movie with my best friends, couldn't have watched it with anyone better. Literally nothing bad to say about it. I loved every moment of it. I loved all of the characters. I loved who they chose for the characters as well. I feel like Rachel Zegler, phenomenal singer. Like her singing voice is incredible. I continue to listen to the soundtrack non-stop every day since I first watched this movie in cinemas. The soundtrack was amazing, which is again another plus for me because I love musical movies. What else can I say? Tom Blythe was hot. I loved Sejanus' character as well. Sejanus was also hot. I thought Hunter Schafer played Tigris so well. I genuinely don't think they could have gotten anyone better for Tigris than Hunter Schafer. I think the casting was phenomenal, like best casting ever. Dialogue was insane. I think it was visually insane. Like the cinematography was so good. My favorite scene was when she's like holding all of the snakes, when the snakes are like crawling up on her arms and she's singing right into the camera, and it's intense. I remember it gave me goosebumps when I first watched that for the first time, and I watched it a second time, it gave me goosebumps again. I love that scene. It made it, that other guy gets engulfed by the snakes, and just all of his scenes where he's kind of sticking it to the Capitol, when he takes down the flag, and when he lays all the bodies together. I loved that. I love the fact that this movie did not stray away from the way it was directed in previous movies. It very much still felt like a movie out of the original series. It did not feel out of place. It felt completely perfect for me. Completely perfect. I am obsessed with this movie, and it's genuine. Nothing but praise. I don't even know where I would rank it at the moment because I'm still so in love with this movie right now. I'm still so much in my honeymoon phase with this movie that I cannot objectively rank it like next to all of the other Hunger Games movies right now because I love it so much that I just can't. It's just so good. I love the boot scooting scene where Lucy Gray comes back and she's on stage and there's a fight that happens. I love every single thing about this movie. Seriously, seriously, like, there's nothing else to say about it. I loved that part where the rebel bombing happens and it's just like this slow-mo of them like circling around Snow and Lucy, just like scrambling in the rubbish. So good. The cinematography, amazing. Dialogue, insane. Visuals, incredible.
Talented, brilliant, incredible, amazing, show-stopping, spectacular, never the same, totally unique, completely not ever been done before.
Nothing wrong with it. Love this movie, hands down. And it lands on top. Snow lands on top, guys. Like you heard it here first. Snow lands on top. So yeah. Well, here you have it, guys. This is my final ranking of all of the movies I have remembered, like I can remember that I've watched this year. I am pretty happy with it. It's just something for shits and giggles, like it really doesn't mean much. And my opinion can obviously change whenever, wherever. So yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed my commentary. Hopefully you could understand what I was trying to say. I feel like I tend to ramble, and I feel like I mumble and stumble over my own words to the point where I sometimes just don't make a lot of cohesive grammatical sense. But hopefully you could understand majority of what I was saying, and I hope you enjoyed this video. So yeah, I will see you guys next year, hopefully making a 2024 version of this. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.
I'd rather be lost in the